Picture this. You're a medieval laborer heading out at dawn, your stomach growling, but there's no drive-through window waiting for you. No grab-and-go sandwiches, no convenience stores. Yet somehow, people back then figured out portable meals that were so ingenious, so perfectly designed for life on the move, that they'd make our modern fast food look primitive. These weren't just random scraps thrown together, they were edible engineering marvels. Some doubled as plates, others survived months without spoiling, and a few were so beautiful they belonged at royal feasts. These forgotten medieval sandwiches held secrets we've completely lost. The humble trencher. Long before disposable plates cluttered landfills, medieval diners had solved the waste problem with pure genius. The trencher wasn't just bread, it was an edible plate that absorbed every drop of flavor from the meal piled on top of it. Picture thick, square slabs of deliberately stale bread, rock hard and sturdy enough to hold the weight of steaming stews and roasted meats without falling apart. These weren't accidental leftovers, they were engineered dining solutions that served dual purposes with remarkable efficiency. The smell hit you first, that deep, yeasty aroma of day-old bread mixed with whatever rich gravies and meat juices soaked into its porous surface. As the meal progressed, the trencher transformed from a simple bread base into something extraordinary. Every drop of sauce, every bit of fat from the meat above seeped down, turning the once hard bread into a flavor-soaked treasure. The texture evolved throughout the meal, starting firm and gradually softening as it absorbed those precious juices, becoming increasingly tender and flavorful with each passing minute. By meal's end, you had two choices: devour this gravy-drunk bread yourself or give it away to the poor, making it both practical and charitable. Wealthier households sometimes baked specific loaves just for this purpose, deliberately making them extra thick and sturdy, while commoners simply used yesterday's stale bread that would otherwise have been wasted.
Bread is important to all Western cultures, but it was extremely important 200 and 300 years ago, specifically to the poor.
The ingredients were deliberately simple: stone ground, whole wheat flour, dark rye flour, oat flour, yeast or ale barm, salt, and water. The key was making it thick and letting it go completely stale for 3 to 5 days. This wasn't accidental staleness, it was engineered durability that transformed ordinary bread into functional tableware. Creating trenchers required patience and planning. You'd mix the coarse flours with yeast and salt, adding warm water until a ragged dough formed. After kneading for nearly 20 minutes until cohesive, the dough rose for an hour, got punched down, then rose again. Baking happened at high heat initially, then lower temperatures until golden brown. But here's the crucial part. Once cooled, you left the loaf completely exposed to air for days, never wrapping it. Only when it reached rock-like hardness would you slice it horizontally into thick trencher plates. This wasn't just eating, it was medieval sustainability in action, turning every meal into a zero-waste experience centuries before anyone invented that term. Hardtack, the traveler's enduring companion. If medieval food had a superhero, hardtack would be its Captain America, nearly indestructible and designed to last forever. This simple biscuit earned its reputation as the ultimate survival food, known for its rock-like consistency and ability to outlast empires.
This is a ship's biscuit. It's hardtack. It's pure condensed nutrition.
Sailors on month-long voyages swore by it, soldiers carried it into battle, and travelers tucked it into their packs, knowing it would never spoil, never mold, and never let them down. The emphasis on preservation over immediate palatability highlighted a clear trade-off between food safety and culinary enjoyment that defined survival provisions. The experience of eating hardtack was unforgettable, though not always pleasantly. Fresh from the oven, it had a plain, weedy smell with hints of salt, honest, unpretentious aromas that promised sustenance without frills, but eating it required strategy and patience. Bite into it unprepared, and you'd risk chipping a tooth on what felt like edible stone. Smart medieval folks knew the secret. Dunk it in hot broth, ale, or even water until it softened into something approaching actual food. The texture transformed from concrete hard to chewy, absorbing whatever liquid surrounded it and taking on those flavors. It tasted of survival itself, bland, functional, but oddly satisfying when you were genuinely hungry. The beauty of hardtack lay in its minimalism. Just 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt. No eggs to spoil, no butter to go rancid, no fancy additions to complicate things. This simplicity was its strength, making it the most reliable portable food ever invented, capable of lasting indefinitely when properly stored. Making hardtack was deceptively simple, but required precision. You'd combine 3/4 cup flour with 1/4 cup water and 1/2 teaspoon salt, mixing until a firm dough formed. The consistency mattered. Too wet and it wouldn't keep, too dry and it wouldn't hold together. Roll it out to exactly 1/2 inch thickness, then cut into 3-inch squares using a knife or pastry cutter. The baking process was crucial. 30 minutes on one side at medium heat, then flip and bake 15 more minutes until golden and completely hard. The final product should sound like tapping wood when knocked. Before eating, veterans always soaked it in whatever liquid was available, broth, water, or ale, transforming this medieval energy bar from punishment into genuine sustenance that could keep you alive when nothing else was available. Barley bread with honey and ale. In the stone halls of medieval monasteries, where brewing and baking were sacred arts, monks perfected a bread that captured the essence of their self-sufficient lifestyle. This wasn't ordinary bread. It was a celebration of monastic ingenuity, combining 3 pillars of medieval monastery life: their carefully tended grain stores, golden honey from their apiaries, and rich brown ale from their breweries. The result was a loaf that filled the air with an intoxicating aroma that could draw people from across the monastery grounds, proving that religious devotion and culinary excellence could exist in perfect harmony.
Fresh milled flour, honey oat bread. This bread is delicious.
The scent alone was transformative. Imagine walking into a bakery where someone's simultaneously brewing beer and harvesting honey. The barley gave it an earthy, nutty foundation, while the ale added a deep, malty richness that made your mouth water before you even saw the loaf. When you broke it open, steam would escape carrying those complex aromas, and the first bite delivered a wonderfully dense, chewy texture with subtle sweetness from the honey cutting through the robust grain flavors. The ale didn't make it alcoholic, but it contributed a complexity that regular water could never achieve, adding natural enzymes that enhanced fermentation and created depth of flavor. The ingredients reflected monastic abundance and careful resource management. Barley flour, strong wholemeal flour, salt, fresh yeast, clear honey, brown ale, and warm water. Each component served a purpose: the barley for hardiness and nutrition, the wholemeal flour for structure and rise, and the ale for both flavor and the natural enzymes that helped fermentation proceed more effectively. Creating this bread required patience and technique that honored monastic traditions. First, you'd blend 1/2 ounce of fresh yeast with brown ale until creamy, then mix in 2 teaspoons of clear honey and warm water. In a separate large bowl, combine 8 ounces barley flour with 1 pound strong wholemeal flour and salt. Gradually add the ale mixture, stirring until firm dough formed, adjusting consistency with extra water if needed. After the first rise in a warm location until doubled, you'd punch down the dough and divide it between 2 prepared bread tins for another rise. The baking happened at high heat, around 450 degrees, for 20 minutes until the loaves sang with that distinctive hollow sound when tapped. The finished bread stayed fresh for days, and each slice carried the industrious spirit of medieval monastic life. Medieval Egyptian bread rolls. From the bustling markets of 14th century Cairo came bread rolls that showcased the sophisticated culinary networks of the medieval world. These weren't peasant food. They were luxury items that displayed wealth through their exotic ingredients, representing a more refined and perhaps celebratory form of bread that emphasized the use of white wheat flour, meticulous kneading, and precise baking techniques. Pistachios from distant groves, almonds from Mediterranean orchards, and precious sesame oil all found their way into these golden rolls, creating something that smelled like prosperity itself and demonstrated the extensive trade networks that characterized the medieval world. The aroma hit you in waves, nutty sesame oil warming in the oven, followed by the rich scents of toasted almonds and pistachios releasing their oils as they heated. The combination created an olfactory experience that announced luxury and careful preparation, scents that spoke of international commerce and culinary sophistication. Breaking open one of these rolls was like unwrapping a treasure. The crust cracked to reveal a dense, almost cake-like interior, studded with emerald green pistachios and creamy white almond pieces that had been distributed evenly throughout the dough. Each bite delivered layers of flavor that justified their precious nature. The nutty richness of sesame oil providing a distinctive Middle Eastern character, the subtle sweetness of perfectly roasted nuts, and the complex tang of sourdough that had fermented overnight to develop deep, yeasty flavors. The texture was substantial yet tender, with the nuts providing delightful pops of contrasting texture and concentrated flavor. These rolls didn't just fill you up. They announced that whoever served them had access to the finest ingredients from across the known world. The ingredient list read like a merchant's inventory from the spice routes: white wheat flour, sesame oil, warm water, sourdough starter, sesame seeds, shelled pistachios, peeled almonds, and salt. Every component had traveled hundreds of miles to reach medieval Egyptian kitchens, making these rolls edible proof of international trade and cultural exchange. The preparation was meticulous, reflecting their precious nature. You'd start by coarsely mincing the pistachios and almonds using a sharp knife, then knead the flour with sourdough starter, sesame oil, and gradually added warm water until achieving the perfect consistency, neither too soft nor too hard. As the original text specified, the minced nuts and sesame seeds were incorporated through continued kneading until evenly distributed throughout the dough. The mixture then rested overnight, allowing the sourdough to work its magic and flavors to meld completely. The next day, you'd shape 4 round rolls and bake them carefully at low heat for 35 minutes. Venison pasties, Robin Hood's pasties. In the grand halls of 15th century England, few dishes commanded as much respect as venison pasties, frequently gracing the tables of high-status feasts with an authority that spoke of power and privilege. These weren't just food, they were edible declarations of aristocratic dominance. Venison belonged exclusively to the nobility, protected by strict hunting laws that made poaching a crime punishable by death. The recipe, specifically identified as Robin Hood's pasties and recorded in the Harleian manuscript 279, represented more than sustenance. It was a clear demonstration of wealth and social standing, showcasing the host's access to prized ingredients and skilled cooks. When these golden parcels emerged from castle ovens, they carried the intoxicating aroma of wild game mixed with exotic spices that most commoners would never smell, let alone taste. The scent was magnificent and complex. Rich, gamey venison mingling with the sharp bite of black pepper and the warm heat of ginger, creating an olfactory announcement of luxury that filled entire halls.
And here we are, the venison pasties of Robin Hood.
As the pastry cracked open, steam escaped, carrying those precious aromas, revealing tender chunks of deer meat that had been transformed by medieval spice artistry into something truly extraordinary. Each bite delivered layers of flavor that justified the dish's prestigious reputation. The lean, distinctive taste of wild venison, enhanced by robust spicing that reflected the medieval elite's love for bold, complex flavor profiles. The combination of venison with strong spices was characteristic of medieval upper-class cuisine, which often favored complex, sweet-sour flavor combinations. The pastry itself, made with butter and whole wheat flour, provided a sturdy yet flaky shell that contained all those precious juices, while adding its own rich, satisfying taste. The ingredients list revealed the dish's luxury status: venison loin, black pepper, ginger, and salt for the filling, plus whole wheat flour, salted butter, water, and egg yolks for the pastry. The spices alone cost more than most people earned in a week, making these pasties symbols of aristocratic excess and international trade. Creating these required skill and patience that honored their prestigious nature. The venison was first parboiled for 30 minutes in generously salted water, then sliced into small pieces while still partially raw. The spice mixture combined generous amounts of black pepper, ginger, and salt. For the pastry, butter was carefully worked into flour until evenly distributed, then egg yolks beaten with water created the binding liquid. After thorough kneading and resting, the dough was rolled thin and cut into circles, filled generously with spiced venison, then folded and crimped into the distinctive pasty shape before baking until golden perfection. 14th century mushroom pasties. From the pages of The Goodman of Paris, a remarkable 14th century household manual, came these sophisticated vegetarian pasties that challenged every assumption about medieval cuisine. These weren't born from poverty or religious restrictions. They were genuine delicacies that showcased the era's appreciation for earthy, complex flavors, while highlighting the typical vagueness of medieval spice quantities that often relied on pre-mixed powder fort for flavoring. The very existence of such refined meatless dishes reveals a medieval culinary sophistication often overlooked by modern assumptions about historical eating habits, proving that flavorful vegetarian options were valued long before modern dietary trends. The aroma was pure autumn forest captured in pastry, deep, woodsy scents of mushrooms releasing their moisture and concentrating their flavors as they cooked. The kitchen filled with earthy fragrances that promised something substantial and satisfying, while the blend of powdered spices created a warm, exotic backdrop that announced careful preparation. Coriander, ginger, pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg combined to create layers of aromatic complexity that transformed simple mushrooms into something genuinely luxurious. When you bit through the crisp pastry shell, you encountered a filling that was intensely savory and satisfying, proving conclusively that medieval cooks understood how to make vegetables the undisputed star of any dish. The mushrooms had developed a meaty texture through careful preparation, enhanced by the nutty richness of melted Gruyere cheese that added both flavor and substance. The spice blend created warmth and complexity that made each bite a discovery, while the cheese provided richness that satisfied even the heartiest appetites. This wasn't substitute food, it was cuisine that stood proudly on its own merits. The ingredients reflected both accessibility and sophisticated flavor development. Cremini or white button mushrooms, grated Gruyere cheese with Comté or Beaufort as acceptable alternatives, and a carefully balanced spice mixture including coriander, ginger, pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Olive oil and salt completed the filling, all encased in simple short crust pastry with an egg wash for that distinctive golden finish. The preparation honored medieval techniques while acknowledging practical considerations. Small, young mushrooms were briefly parboiled in salted water, a crucial step that cleaned them thoroughly while preventing the pastry from becoming soggy during baking. After draining and rough chopping, they were combined with the precise spice blend, olive oil, and generous amounts of grated cheese. The mixture-filled pastry-lined muffin cups was topped with additional cheese if desired, then sealed with pastry lids and brushed with beaten egg before baking at moderate heat for 15 to 20 minutes until golden brown and perfectly set. Cornish pasty. Deep in the tin mines of 13th century Cornwall, miners created what might be the most ingenious portable meal ever devised. The Cornish pasty wasn't just food, it was edible engineering that solved multiple problems with brilliant simplicity. The thick, rope-like crimped edge wasn't decorative, it was a disposable handle that allowed miners to eat their meal without contaminating the filling with their arsenic-laden hands. After eating the contents, they'd discard the crust edge, preventing deadly poisoning while ensuring nothing edible went to waste. The aroma was pure comfort, beef and vegetables slowly steaming together inside their pastry fortress, creating an insulated meal that stayed warm for hours in the cool depths of the mines. When you bit through the golden, sturdy crust, you encountered layers of perfectly seasoned ingredients, tender chunks of beef, creamy potatoes, sweet swede, and sharp onions that had melded together during baking. The pastry absorbed the meat juices while maintaining its structural integrity, creating a self-contained dining experience that required no plates, no utensils, and produced minimal waste. The traditional filling was deceptively simple but perfectly balanced. Diced beef, skirt steak was preferred, potatoes, swede, rutabaga, onions, salt, and pepper. The pastry combined plain flour, butter, lard, and a beaten egg, creating a shell robust enough to withstand rough handling while remaining pleasantly edible. The construction process was almost ritualistic in its precision. Butter and lard were rubbed into flour until resembling breadcrumbs. Then egg and cold water brought everything together into a smooth dough that rested in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. Meanwhile, all vegetables and meat were diced to uniform size and seasoned generously. The chilled pastry was rolled into circles, filled with the raw mixture on one half, then folded over and crimped with that distinctive rope-like seal. The key was crimping tightly enough to prevent leaks while creating that crucial disposable handle. Baking at high heat ensured the pastry crisped while the filling cooked completely, steaming together into the perfect miner's meal. This wasn't just sustenance, it was survival food designed by people who understood exactly what they needed to get through their dangerous workday. Medieval pork rolls, tartlets. From the refined kitchens described in The Medieval Cookbook by Maggie Black, came these delicate pork rolls that proved medieval dining wasn't all about hefty roasts and thick stews. These tartlets represented the lighter, more snack-oriented side of medieval cuisine, perfect for what we might call medieval tea time. They were portable luxury, small enough to eat in a few bites, yet sophisticated enough to impress guests with their complex flavors and delicate presentation. The aroma was intoxicating, cooked pork mingling with the warm sweetness of raisins and the exotic bite of medieval spices. As these golden parcels crisped in the oven, the kitchen filled with scents that announced something special. The rich meatiness of pork, enhanced by cumin's earthiness, black pepper's heat, and ginger's warming spice. When you bit through the flaky phyllo layers, you encountered a filling that perfectly embodied medieval flavor preferences. Savory meat sweetened with dried fruit and enlivened with complex spicing. The texture contrast was delightful. Crispy, buttery pastry giving way to a moist, flavorful interior where every ingredient played its part in creating something greater than the sum of its parts. The ingredients reflected medieval abundance and trade connections: cooked and uncooked minced pork, salt, raisins, and a spice blend of cumin, black pepper, and ginger. Phyllo sheets provided the delicate wrapping, bound with egg yolk and brushed with egg white. An optional serving sauce combined chicken stock with uncooked minced pork, coriander, cinnamon, and brown sugar. The preparation required finesse and attention to detail. The pork mixture was bound with beaten egg yolk, then carefully wrapped in stacked phyllo sheets brushed with egg white. Each sheet was cut into strips about 3 inches wide, filled with a tablespoon of the pork mixture, then rolled tightly with both ends, sealed to prevent leaking. The rolls were arranged on baking sheets and brushed with more egg white before baking at high heat for 10 to 12 minutes until golden and crisp. For those wanting the full medieval experience, the optional warm sauce was served alongside, adding another layer of complexity to these already sophisticated little parcels that transformed simple ingredients into something truly elegant. Medieval-inspired festive sausage rolls. These festive sausage rolls traced their lineage back to medieval mince pies, but not the sweet fruit confections we know today. Original minced pies were luxury items reserved for Christmas feasts of the super wealthy, packed with expensive minced beef or mutton, exotic spices, and dried fruits that cost more than most people earned in months. These sausage rolls captured that same spirit of celebration and abundance, transforming humble ingredients into something that felt like a feast even on ordinary days. The aroma was pure medieval Christmas, rich beef mingling with the warm sweetness of raisins, currants, and snipped prunes, all enhanced by nutmeg's warming spice and black pepper's bite. As they baked, the kitchen filled with scents that seemed to transport you back centuries, when such combinations were the height of culinary sophistication. The first bite revealed layers of complexity: savory beef enhanced by fruit sweetness, breadcrumbs adding texture, and spices creating warmth that spread through your entire mouth. The puff pastry provided a buttery, flaky shell that contained all these precious flavors, while adding its own rich, satisfying taste. The ingredients showed how medieval luxury adapted to modern kitchens: ready-roll puff pastry, minced beef, breadcrumbs made from fresh bread, salt, black pepper, nutmeg, mixed spice, raisins, currants, snipped prunes, light brown sugar, and beaten egg for glazing. Each component served the same purpose as in medieval times: extending the meat while adding flavor and visual appeal. The technique honored traditional methods while embracing convenience. Fresh breadcrumbs were seasoned with salt, pepper, nutmeg, and mixed spice. Dried fruits were microwaved briefly to soften them, then pureed with brown sugar into a smooth paste that was folded into the seasoned breadcrumbs, along with the raw, minced beef and water. The mixture was then wrapped in puff pastry strips, sealed carefully to prevent bursting, and brushed with beaten egg before baking until golden and puffed. The result captured the essence of medieval festive eating: the same sweet, savory combinations, the same sense of abundance and celebration, proving that some flavor principles are truly timeless, and that luxury, once tasted, never really goes out of style. Tudor vegetable pie. From the year 1596 came this pie of bald meats for fish days, a clever creation born from religious necessity that became something genuinely delicious. During Lent and on Fridays, when the church forbade eating meat, Tudor cooks faced a challenge: how to create satisfying, flavorful meals without any animal protein. This vegetable pie was their brilliant answer, a hearty, filling dish that proved meatless meals could be every bit as satisfying as their meaty counterparts, while showcasing the ingenuity that flourished within religious constraints. The aroma was unexpectedly rich and complex for a vegetable dish. As it baked, the kitchen filled with the earthy scents of mixed greens, spinach, lettuce, cabbage, and chard, mingling with the warm sweetness of cinnamon and sugar, punctuated by the sharp tang of melted cheese. When you cut through the golden pastry crust, steam escaped carrying these mingled fragrances, revealing a filling that looked like a medieval garden captured in pie form. The first bite was a revelation, the slight bitterness of the greens balanced by sweet raisins, the richness of cheese and eggs binding everything together, while breadcrumbs added substance, and the hint of cinnamon provided an unexpected warmth that elevated the entire experience. The ingredients reflected both abundance and creativity, a mixture of greens including spinach, lettuce, cabbage, and chard, combined with chopped raisins, grated hard cheese, fresh breadcrumbs, salt, cinnamon, sugar, raw egg yolks, a hard-boiled egg yolk, and melted butter. Optional black pepper could add extra heat for those who preferred it. The preparation honored Tudor techniques while remaining accessible. The coarse stalks were removed from the greens before shredding the leaves thinly. These were then combined with all other filling ingredients, mixing thoroughly to distribute the flavors evenly. The mixture was packed firmly into a pastry-lined dish covered with the remaining pastry and decorated if desired. Baking happened at low heat for 50 minutes to an hour until the crust turned golden and the filling set completely. A final brush of melted butter and sprinkle of fine sugar before serving added the finishing touch that transformed this practical Lenten meal into something that felt genuinely festive and satisfying. Medieval fish pies, repai. The term repai in medieval culinary texts referred to a distinctive sauce made from dried fruits boiled in wine and heavily spiced, typically served with meat or fish. But this ingenious recipe transformed that flavorful sauce into the actual filling for fish pies, creating something intended for Lenten days when meat was forbidden. These weren't just substitutes for meat pies. They were sophisticated creations that showcased medieval cooks' mastery of complex sweet savory flavor profiles that defined elite cuisine of the era. The aroma was intoxicating and unexpected, the clean scent of white fish mingling with the rich sweetness of figs and raisins, all enhanced by exotic spices that most people today would never think to pair with seafood. Galangal added an almost ginger-like warmth, while cloves provided deep, aromatic complexity, and crushed peppercorns delivered gentle heat. When you broke through the olive oil-enriched pastry, you encountered a filling that challenged every modern assumption about medieval food. The fish had been transformed into something almost luxurious, with the fruit paste adding sweetness that complemented rather than overwhelmed the delicate seafood, while the spices created layers of flavor that unfolded with each bite. The ingredients revealed the medieval love for combining seemingly opposite elements: haddock fillet or other mild white fish, galangal powder, ground cloves, crushed black peppercorns, dry white wine, seedless raisins, and dried figs. The pastry used flour, salt, olive oil, and water, ingredients that created a sturdy yet tender shell. The preparation was labor-intensive but rewarding. Raisins and chopped figs were simmered in white wine until tender, then blended into a smooth paste. The fish was also processed into paste, then combined with the fruit mixture and all spices. For the pastry, olive oil was worked into flour and salt, until resembling breadcrumbs. Then water was gradually added until the dough formed. After resting and kneading, the dough was divided and rolled into circles. Each circle was filled with the fish fruit mixture, folded into half-moon shapes, and sealed carefully. A light brush of olive oil and steam vents completed the preparation before baking until golden brown, creating pies that proved medieval cuisine was far more sophisticated than most people imagine. Onion and egg tart, tart in Imberday. From the prestigious medieval cookbook, Form of Curie, dating to approximately 1390, came this savory tart whose very name revealed its purpose. Imberday referred to Ember Days, specific religious fasting periods in the medieval liturgical calendar when meat consumption was strictly forbidden. This wasn't just food, it was spiritual sustenance, proving that medieval cooks could create deeply satisfying dishes using only eggs, herbs, and vegetables while honoring their religious obligations. The aroma was pure comfort, sweet onions caramelizing gently, releasing their natural sugars, and filling the kitchen with that irresistible scent that draws people from across the house. Mixed with fresh herbs, the smell became even more inviting, while the eggs added richness that promised substance and satisfaction. When you cut into the finished tart, the filling had a custard-like consistency, dotted with golden onion pieces and flecks of green herbs. Each bite delivered layers of flavor, the natural sweetness of properly cooked onions, balanced by the richness of eggs, while herbs provided fresh, bright notes that kept the dish from feeling heavy. The saffron added a subtle luxury and beautiful golden color that elevated this humble tart into something worthy of any table. The ingredients reflected both practicality and accessibility. Onions, fresh herbs like parsley, breadcrumbs, eggs, butter or oil, saffron, salt, raisins, Corinth currants, a touch of sugar, and powder deuce, a medieval blend of sweet spices like ginger and cinnamon. All of this was encased in a prepared pie crust that medieval texts called a trap or shell. The preparation honored medieval techniques while remaining straightforward. Onions were first parboiled for 2 to 3 minutes, then drained thoroughly and chopped finely along with chosen herbs. These were combined with breadcrumbs, eggs, butter, saffron, salt, currants, sugar, and the sweet spice blend, mixing everything evenly. The mixture was poured into the prepared pie crust and baked at moderate heat for 30 to 40 minutes until the eggs were completely set and the crust golden. After cooling for 10 to 15 minutes, it was sliced and served, proving that religious restrictions often sparked the greatest culinary creativity. Onion and herb frittata. In medieval kitchens, where practicality ruled supreme, this onion and herb frittata stood out as remarkably versatile and economical. It perfectly embodied the resourceful spirit of medieval cooking, utilizing readily available eggs and herbs to create something that could be served hot from the pan or packed cold for a day's labor. For workers, market sellers, and travelers seeking sustaining portable meals, this thick egg cake delivered both convenience and satisfaction, proving that simple ingredients could yield truly nourishing results when treated with patience and care. The aroma was irresistible. Sweet onions slowly caramelizing in butter, their natural sugars concentrating and filling the kitchen with that golden, comforting scent that promised good things ahead. As fresh herbs joined the pan, their bright, grassy notes mingled with the rich onion fragrance, while beaten eggs added promise of substance and richness. The finished frittata had a wonderful texture, tender throughout with pockets of sweet, golden onions and bursts of fresh herbal flavor in every bite. It was satisfying without being heavy, rich enough to sustain hard-working people, yet light enough to remain appealing whether served warm from the pan or eaten cold hours later. The ingredients were wonderfully straightforward: thinly sliced onions, butter or cooking fat, beaten eggs, salt, pepper, and generous amounts of finely chopped fresh herbs. The beauty lay in the simplicity. No exotic spices or expensive ingredients, just honest flavors that any household could afford and enjoy. The technique honored medieval cooking methods while ensuring perfect results. Onions were slowly sautéed in butter over moderate heat until they became soft, golden, and fragrant, never rushed, always allowed to develop their natural sweetness. Meanwhile, eggs were beaten with salt, pepper, and generous amounts of chopped herbs. Once the onions reached perfection, they were gently folded into the egg mixture. The entire mixture returned to the pan and cooked slowly over moderate heat, allowing the eggs to set gradually without browning too much. For even cooking, it could be finished under a hot lid or in a hearth oven. The result was a thick, tender egg cake that delivered comfort and sustenance in equal measure. Stuffed eggs with mint. From 15th century German kitchens came this elegant preparation that transformed humble, hard-boiled eggs into sophisticated first course worthy of the finest tables. This wasn't peasant food. It was culinary artistry that showcased medieval cooks' ability to elevate everyday ingredients through meticulous technique and complex flavor combinations. The dish represented a sophisticated approach to dining, where even simple eggs could become vehicles for displaying wealth, skill, and access to precious herbs and spices. The aroma was intoxicating and complex, the fresh, bright scent of curly mint mingling with earthy sage, while saffron added its distinctive honeyed fragrance that spoke of luxury and distant trade routes. As the stuffed eggs fried gently in butter, these herb and spice aromas intensified, creating an olfactory experience that announced something special was happening. The first bite revealed layers of flavor and texture. The familiar richness of egg yolk transformed by aromatic herbs and warming spices, while the sweet-sour sauce provided a delightful contrast that embodied medieval taste preferences for complex flavor profiles. The ingredients reflected both accessibility and sophistication: hard-boiled eggs, butter, raw egg for binding, curly mint or cosmere, sage, pepper, salt, and precious saffron for the stuffing. The accompanying sauce combined raw eggs, wine vinegar, clear honey, pepper, salt, and optional saffron for color, creating the sweet-sour combination that medieval palates craved. The preparation required patience and skill. After carefully peeling and halving the hard-boiled eggs, the yolks were removed and mashed thoroughly. Finely chopped mint and sage were combined with the mashed yolks, along with pepper, salt, saffron bruised in hot water, and one raw egg to bind everything together. This mixture was carefully spooned back into the egg whites, creating stuffed eggs that were then fried stuffing side down first in melted butter for 2 minutes, then flipped and fried another couple of minutes. Meanwhile, the sauce ingredients were whisked together until well blended. The partially fried eggs were transferred to a casserole, covered with the sauce mixture, and baked until the sauce set completely. The result was an elegant dish that proved medieval cooks understood how to transform simple ingredients into something truly sophisticated. Ciceros, hummus-like chickpea spread. From the French medieval cookbook Du Fait de Cuisine by Chiquart came this remarkable chickpea spread that provided compelling evidence of culinary connections spanning from medieval Europe to the Mediterranean and Middle Eastern regions. This wasn't just coincidence, it was proof of the cultural exchange that occurred through trade routes and returning travelers who brought exotic recipes home. While chickpea-based pastes were common staples in the Levant and Eastern Mediterranean, their appearance in French medieval cookbooks suggested sophisticated international culinary dialogue centuries before modern globalization. The aroma was earthy and inviting, chickpeas ground to smooth paste, releasing their nutty, bean-like fragrance, enhanced by the sharp tang of verjuice and the warm richness of almond oil. Fresh sage added an herbal brightness, while cinnamon contributed unexpected warmth that elevated this simple spread into something more complex and satisfying. The texture was remarkably similar to modern hummus, smooth, creamy, and spreadable, perfect for scooping with flatbreads. Each bite delivered layers of flavor, the fundamental nuttiness of chickpeas enhanced by the sourness of verjuice, the richness of almond oil, and the aromatic complexity of sage and cinnamon working together. The ingredients reflected both accessibility and sophistication. Canned chickpeas, thoroughly washed, verjuice, a sour grape or crabapple juice often substituted with vinegar, almond oil, cinnamon, sage, salt, and optionally, finely chopped parsley root when available. The original text provided meticulous instructions for preparation, including multiple washes and careful seasoning. The preparation honored medieval techniques while embracing modern convenience. After draining and thoroughly washing the chickpeas, they were ground in a mortar and pestle, or food processor, until achieving a completely smooth paste. 2 tablespoons of almond oil were then incorporated, along with 3 to 4 tablespoons of verjuice or vinegar substitute, 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon sage, and approximately 1/2 teaspoon salt. If available, finely chopped parsley root added extra complexity. All ingredients were stirred thoroughly until well blended and the spread achieved uniform consistency. The finished Ciceros was served with flatbreads like pita or unleavened bread, providing a nutritious, plant-based, and completely portable option that proved medieval cuisine was far more internationally connected than commonly assumed. Medieval sausages. From the detailed pages of Le Ménagier de Paris, a 1393 French household manual, came these meticulously crafted sausages that represented medieval preservation mastery at its finest. These weren't just food. They were edible insurance policies against hunger, designed to last through harsh winters and long journeys without refrigeration. The comprehensive utilization of every part of the pig, including intestines for casings, reflected the nose-to-tail approach that maximized resources and minimized waste in pre-modern societies where nothing could be squandered. The aroma was magnificent and complex, rich pork fat rendering slowly while exotic spices released their oils, creating a fragrance that announced prosperity and careful preparation. Cracked fennel seeds provided a sweet, licorice-like base note, while cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, galangal, and grains of paradise created layers of warmth and complexity that transformed simple pork into something luxurious. During smoking, these aromas intensified and concentrated, filling the air with scents that promised long-lasting sustenance. The first bite revealed perfect balance: rich, fatty pork enhanced by the sweet anise notes of fennel and the warming heat of medieval spices, all bound together in natural casings that provided satisfying texture. The ingredients reflected both abundance and international trade: ground pork shoulder, chosen for its ideal fat-to-meat ratio, salt, cracked fennel seed, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, galangal, grains of paradise, and natural sausage casings. Each spice had traveled hundreds of miles to reach medieval kitchens, making these sausages edible proof of global commerce. The preparation required patience and skill. 5 pounds of ground pork shoulder were combined with precise amounts of each spice: 2 tablespoons salt, 1 tablespoon cracked fennel, 1 tablespoon cinnamon, 3/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 1½ teaspoons each of ginger and grains of paradise, plus 1 teaspoon galangal. After thorough mixing, the crucial marination period lasted at least 24 hours, allowing flavors to meld completely. The mixture was then stuffed into casings following traditional techniques. Ideally, the sausages were smoked using mild wood chips at precisely controlled temperatures, 185 degrees for 30 minutes. The original medieval method prescribed smoking for 4 days or more, creating preserved meat that could sustain families through lean times while delivering complex, sophisticated flavors. Apple Muse. This simple yet distinctive dish from medieval times defied easy categorization as mere applesauce, pudding, or oatmeal. Apple Muse represented something uniquely medieval, a preparation that combined practical necessity with aesthetic sophistication. The most fascinating aspect wasn't just the combination of apples with almond milk, honey, and bread, but the deliberate use of saffron and sandalwood primarily for coloring the dish red. This revealed a medieval culinary aesthetic, where visual appeal and vibrant colors were highly valued, especially in higher status dishes, demonstrating a multi-sensory approach to dining that went far beyond simple sustenance. The aroma was intoxicating and complex, sweet apples releasing their essence as they cooked down into smooth puree, enhanced by the nutty richness of almond milk and the floral sweetness of honey. But it was the saffron that truly transformed the experience, adding its distinctive honeyed fragrance that spoke of luxury and distant lands. The sandalwood contributed a subtle woody note that most modern palates would find surprising but somehow harmonious. When you spooned up the finished muse, its deep red color was striking and beautiful, while the taste delivered layers of sweetness and warmth, punctuated by the unique aromatic complexity that made this dish memorable long after the last bite. The ingredients reflected both simplicity and sophistication: apples, almond milk, honey, grated bread, preferably from toasted bread rather than commercial breadcrumbs for proper texture, saffron, optional sandalwood for red coloring, and a pinch of salt to balance the sweetness. Each component served a specific purpose in creating both flavor and visual impact. The preparation honored medieval techniques while remaining accessible. Apples were cored, peeled, and boiled until very soft and easily mashed, then drained and processed through a sieve or blender for smoothness. The apple puree was then combined with almond milk, honey adjusted to taste, grated bread for body, saffron for color and flavor, optional sandalwood for deeper red coloring, and salt for balance. The mixture simmered for 5 to 7 minutes, allowing it to heat through and thicken to desired consistency. Apple muse could be served warm directly from the pot or chilled, with optional Ceylon cinnamon or nutmeg sprinkled on top before serving. Tostés doris, medieval French toast. From Le Viandier de Taillevent, around 1300 came this ingenious solution to one of medieval life's persistent challenges: what to do with stale bread. Tostés doris, meaning glazed toast, was the medieval precursor to what we now call French toast, or pain perdu, lost bread. Before modern food storage methods made stale bread less common, medieval cooks faced this problem daily, and dishes like Tostés doris provided delicious answers that transformed potential waste into something genuinely desirable and satisfying. The aroma was pure comfort, hard white bread, warming as it toasted, releasing that distinctive yeasty fragrance that promised transformation ahead. When the beaten egg yolks were applied, they created a rich custardy coating that sizzled gently in hot butter or lard, filling the kitchen with the irresistible scent of eggs cooking slowly and thoroughly. The finished toast emerged golden and glazed, looking almost lacquered with its shiny egg coating. Each bite delivered rich, creamy textures from the egg glaze surrounding bread that had absorbed those flavors while maintaining just enough structure to provide satisfying substance. The sprinkle of white sugar on top added sweetness that complemented the savory richness perfectly. The ingredients were wonderfully simple yet effective. Hard white bread, stale homemade, brioche, Pullman loaf, or French bread worked perfectly. Egg yolks separated from whites, butter or lard for frying, and white sugar for sprinkling. The medieval preference for pork fat or lard over butter reflected both availability and flavor preferences of the era. The preparation honored historical methods while ensuring perfect results. Hard white bread was sliced into squares approximately 1 inch thick, then lightly toasted on a grill or in a toaster until slightly firm, but not heavily browned. 4 egg yolks were beaten in a bowl wide enough for easy dipping, with additional yolks added if more glaze was needed. Each piece of toast was completely coated in beaten egg yolks, allowing for richer absorption if time permitted. The coated bread was then fried in hot butter or lard over moderate heat for a couple of minutes on each side until nicely glazed and golden. Finally, the hot toast was arranged on plates and sprinkled generously with white sugar before serving immediately while still warm. Medieval gingerbread. This wasn't the soft cake or crispy cookies we know today. Medieval gingerbread was a dense, gummy confection that bordered on candy, initially so expensive due to imported spices that only the very wealthy could afford it. By the 14th century, as spice trade routes became more established and efficient, its availability increased, making it attainable for the average wealthy household. This shift in accessibility reflected the profound influence of international commerce on culinary trends, and how certain dishes spread across different social strata through economic changes rather than cultural adoption. The aroma was intoxicating and exotic, honey heating and concentrating its floral sweetness, while dried ginger pieces released their warm, spicy oils. Long pepper added an unusual heat, different from common black pepper, while sandalwood contributed its distinctive woody fragrance that most modern palates would find surprising but somehow harmonious. As the mixture cooked, these aromas melded into something that announced luxury and foreign lands. The finished gingerbread had an intense, concentrated flavor, deeply sweet from honey, with layers of warming spice that built gradually in your mouth. The texture was firm and chewy, almost like a dense fruit leather, requiring slow chewing that released more flavors with each bite. The ingredients revealed medieval luxury: honey, stale white bread or breadcrumbs, dried ginger pieces, long pepper, optional sandalwood for red coloring, sugar, and whole cloves for decoration. Gold leaf represented the ultimate garnish for the most extravagant versions, showing how far medieval cooks would go for visual impact. The preparation required patience and precision. Stale white bread was broken into crumbs, then ground fine using mortar and pestle. Dried ginger and long pepper were ground separately until powdered. Honey was heated in a saucepan until boiling, with any impurities skimmed off. The fine breadcrumbs were gradually stirred into boiling honey until well combined, and the mixture pulled away from pot sides. After removing from heat, the ground spices and optional sandalwood were incorporated, with more spices added to taste. The mixture was rolled out on parchment to desired thickness and left to firm overnight. Finally, it was dusted with sugar, cut into shapes, and decorated with whole cloves, with gold leaf applied for ultimate luxury. Crippies, crisps, fritters. These crippies, often called crisps, were fried, honey-flavored treats popular in 14th century England that showcased medieval ingenuity with simple ingredients. Distinct from pastries made with dough, these were considered fritters because they were prepared from a batter, highlighting an important distinction in medieval cooking terminology. The name crisps might have referred to their curly or frilly appearance rather than a brittle texture, possibly suggesting a preparation method similar to funnel cake, where batter was drizzled into hot oil to create swirls and patterns. The aroma was pure medieval comfort, honey warming gently and releasing its floral sweetness while flour and egg whites combined into a light, promising batter. As spoonfuls of this mixture hit the hot lard, they sizzled immediately, filling the kitchen with the irresistible scent of honey, caramelizing, and batter crisping into golden treats. The finished crippies had a delightful texture, crispy on the outside where they'd contacted the hot fat, yet tender within where the batter had steamed and set. Each bite delivered gentle honey sweetness, balanced by the neutral flour base, creating something satisfying without being overwhelmingly rich. The ambiguity in historical preparation methods meant these could be either dropped in spoonfuls or drizzled to create decorative swirls. The ingredients reflected medieval simplicity and accessibility: flour, egg whites, honey, water, and lard or oil for frying. This combination created treats that were both economical and delicious, using staples that most households could afford while delivering genuine satisfaction. The preparation embraced historical uncertainty while ensuring delicious results. 2 egg whites were whisked with 1/4 cup water and 1 teaspoon honey until well combined. This liquid mixture was gradually added to 1/4 cup flour, mixing thoroughly to create batter. The original measurements resulted in relatively runny consistency similar to pancake batter, though additional flour could thicken it if desired. White grease or oil was heated in a frying pan until hot and ready. The batter was then dropped by tablespoons into hot fat, with the original recipe's instruction to stir it until you have many, suggesting either repeated dropping and stirring or drizzling the batter around to create swirls. The crippies were fried until golden brown, flipped for even cooking, then drained on paper towels before serving, with optional honey or powdered sugar sprinkled on top. Emperor's fritters. From the 14th century Italian manuscript Anonimo Veneziano came these sweet and relatively simple fritters that earned the magnificent title Emperor's fritters, despite their straightforward preparation. They were described as magnificent and suitable for an emperor, primarily due to their aesthetic appeal and the perceived value of their carefully selected ingredients. The emphasis on all-white ingredients, pine nuts, egg whites, cheese, flour, and sugar, highlighted a specific medieval aesthetic preference, possibly associated with purity or luxury, that elevated even simple preparations to grand status through careful selection and presentation. The aroma was subtle yet enticing, firm cheese warming and beginning to melt, releasing its rich, savory notes that mingled surprisingly well with the sweet anticipation of sugar and the nutty fragrance of pine nuts. As these fritters sizzled in hot lard, the kitchen filled with the comforting scent of egg whites setting and flour crisping, while the pine nuts released their distinctive oils that added complexity to the overall fragrance. The visual appeal was striking. These golden brown fritters dusted with white sugar looked like edible jewels, justifying their imperial name through sheer beauty. The first bite revealed unexpected harmony between seemingly conflicting flavors. The firm cheese provided a savory, slightly salty foundation that was perfectly balanced by the sweetness of the sugar dusting and the rich nuttiness of pine nuts. The egg whites created a light, airy texture that contrasted beautifully with the dense cheese, while the flour provided structure that held everything together. Each fritter delivered a complex flavor profile that was simultaneously sweet and savory, rich yet light, proving that medieval Italian cooks understood flavor balance at the highest level. The ingredients reflected luxury through simplicity. Egg whites from 4 eggs, 350 grams firm cheese, 50 grams flour, 20 grams pine nuts, generous amounts of lard or olive oil for frying, and white cane sugar for dusting. Pine nuts, though commonly used since antiquity, still contributed significant value to the dish, while white sugar was considered the finest type available. The preparation required skill and timing. The firm cheese was cut into slices, then pounded in a mortar until well broken down. 4 egg whites were beaten until frothy, then combined with the pounded cheese. Flour and pine nuts were incorporated to form a cohesive batter. Generous amounts of lard were melted and heated until boiling hot. Using a ladle, portions of the mixture were carefully fried, 1 or 2 at a time to avoid overcrowding. Once golden brown, the fritters were removed, plated, and dusted generously with ground white cane sugar before serving hot. Medieval oatcakes. These simple, versatile flatbreads boasted a remarkable history, stretching back to Scotland well before the Roman era, representing one of humanity's most enduring portable foods. In the 14th century, French chronicler Jean le Bel described nuns making little pancakes, rather like communion wafers, a description widely believed to refer to the process of making oatcakes. These weren't just food, they were currency, literally used as battle fuel for troops, and even accepted as payment in some regions, underscoring their incredible practicality and nutritional value in sustaining populations during challenging times. The aroma was humble, yet comforting, rolled oats releasing their earthy, nutty fragrance as they warmed in the pan, enhanced by the sweet warmth of cinnamon and the rich promise of butter beginning to sizzle. As the egg whites bound everything together, the kitchen filled with scents that spoke of simplicity and sustenance, the kind of honest aromas that reminded you of home and hearth. Medieval oatcakes were often unleavened or leavened with yeast or ale barm, typically baked on a down hearth, a flat stone in the center of a hut where a fire was built, reflecting the common cooking practices of peasants who lacked sophisticated ovens. The finished oatcakes had a wonderfully satisfying texture, crispy on the outside where they'd contacted the hot fat, yet tender and slightly chewy within. Each bite delivered the fundamental nuttiness of oats, enhanced by cinnamon's warming spice, while the egg whites provided structure and the butter added richness that transformed these simple ingredients into something genuinely satisfying. They could be enjoyed plain as a simple snack or topped with chopped fruit or maple syrup for a more elaborate presentation, making them adaptable to whatever accompaniments were available. The ingredients reflected medieval accessibility and practicality: rolled oats, cinnamon, egg whites, and butter for frying. Historically, yeast or ale barm could also serve as leavening agents, though this simpler version relied on egg whites for binding and lift. The preparation honored traditional methods while ensuring consistent results. 2 cups rolled oats were combined with 1 teaspoon cinnamon and 4 egg whites, mixing thoroughly until well blended and cohesive. A small amount of butter was heated in a frying pan over medium heat, with careful attention to prevent burning or browning that could impart undesirable flavors. The oatcake mixture was spooned into small, cake-like shapes and gently fried for 4 to 5 minutes on each side until golden brown and cooked through. The finished oatcakes were served hot, proving that the simplest ingredients could create the most enduring and satisfying foods. Medieval apple bread. While direct medieval recipes for apple bread remain scarce in historical records, the concept of mixing apples with flour to create poverty bread emerged in France by the late 18th and early 19th centuries. This practice likely represented a response to economic necessity, allowing households to extend their precious flour supplies during periods of scarcity or poor harvests. The principle perfectly aligned with medieval resourcefulness, where ingredients like roots, bark, peas, and beans were incorporated into bread when flour was scarce, suggesting that similar fruit-infused breads could have existed in earlier periods, even without explicit documentation. The aroma was extraordinary and inviting, fresh apples releasing their sweet, fruity essence as they broke down into soft pulp, their natural sugars concentrating and caramelizing slightly during the cooking process. This apple fragrance mingled beautifully with the earthy, yeasty scent of quality flour, creating an olfactory experience that promised comfort and satisfaction. The use of an enameled saucepan or stone jar for boiling the apples prevented discoloration, highlighting an early awareness of food aesthetics and proper preparation techniques that elevated even necessity-driven recipes into something appealing. The finished bread had a unique character that defied simple categorization. Denser than regular bread due to the apple content, yet lighter and more tender than purely flour-based loaves. Each slice revealed a moist, cake-like texture, studded with pieces of cooked apple that had melded seamlessly with the dough. The flavor was subtly sweet and fruity, with the apples providing natural moisture that kept the bread fresh, longer than standard loaves. This wasn't just stretched flour. It was a genuinely delicious transformation that proved necessity could indeed be the mother of culinary invention. The ingredients reflected practical abundance: 7 pounds fresh, juicy apples, 14 pounds of the best flour, standard quantity of yeast for common bread, and enough water or natural apple juice to form proper dough consistency. The emphasis on using very fresh, juicy apples ensured maximum flavor and moisture content. The preparation required patience and technique. Fresh apples were peeled, cored, and boiled in an enameled saucepan until they broke down into smooth pulp, with careful attention to prevent discoloration. The warm apple pulp was combined with flour and yeast, incorporating enough liquid to form a fine, smooth dough. After placing in prepared pans, the dough rose in a warm location for at least 12 hours. Overnight preparation was recommended for optimal results. The shaped loaves were baked in a moderate oven for at least 1 hour, with buttered forms and parchment lining, ensuring easy removal and preventing sticking. Peasant bread. This bread represented the quintessential daily staple for the majority of medieval population, embodying the harsh economic realities that shaped medieval life, where food choices were dictated by necessity and affordability rather than preference. Unlike the refined white bread favored by the nobility, peasant bread was typically made from coarser, less expensive grains, such as rye, oats, or a mixture of wheat and rye known as maislin. The widespread consumption of such bread contrasted sharply with the luxurious dietary habits of the elite, highlighting the fundamental role of accessible sustenance across all social strata while serving as a visible marker of class distinction. The aroma was honest and earthy, coarser flours releasing their robust, nutty fragrances that spoke of fields and harvest rather than refinement. As the yeast activated in warm water sweetened with sugar, it created that distinctive smell of fermentation beginning, promising sustenance and satisfaction ahead. The baking process filled humble kitchens with scents that meant survival and comfort, the reassuring smell of bread that would feed families for days, stretching precious resources while providing the foundation for countless meals. The texture was substantially different from noble breads, denser, chewier, with a more pronounced grain flavor that required thorough chewing and delivered genuine satisfaction. Each bite provided the fundamental nourishment that sustained working people through demanding physical labor, while the heartier grains offered more complex flavors than refined alternatives. This wasn't delicate or refined. It was robust bread for robust lives, designed to fill stomachs and provide lasting energy for people who couldn't afford the luxury of multiple daily meals. The ingredients reflected practical economy: coarser flour varieties totaling 3 to 5 pounds, warm water, sugar to activate yeast, dry yeast, salt, and small amounts of oil or butter when available. The specific flour types weren't always detailed in historical records, but context implied less refined grains than those used for aristocratic tables. The preparation followed time-tested methods that maximized both flavor and nutrition. Yeast was activated in warm water with sugar, allowed to foam for approximately 5 minutes. Salt was added to the mixture, followed by gradual incorporation of flour while stirring continuously until achieving sticky but solid dough consistency. The dough was kneaded on floured surfaces for 10 to 15 minutes, adding flour to sticky parts as needed until smooth and manageable. After rising in greased containers for 1 hour, the dough was punched down, flipped, covered, and allowed another hour's rise. Finally, it was shaped, given a third rise, then baked at moderate temperatures until golden brown and thoroughly cooked, creating bread that sustained countless medieval families. Herchones, meat hedgehogs. These whimsical herchones, or meat hedgehogs, represented a fascinating aspect of medieval culinary artistry known as subtleties, elaborate decorative creations designed not merely for consumption, but to entertain and impress diners at noble feasts. Originating from English recipes found in manuscripts like Harleian MS 279 from the 15th century, these weren't just meatballs, they were edible sculptures, meticulously crafted from ground pork and shaped to resemble actual hedgehogs, complete with almond slivers for spikes and raisins for eyes, then painted with saffron or parsley to achieve vibrant green or yellow hues. The aroma was rich and complex, ground pork warming and releasing its savory essence, while the mysterious powder fort spice blend filled the kitchen with exotic fragrances. This medieval spice mixture typically contained ginger, allspice, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, and pepper, creating layers of warmth and complexity that transformed simple meat into something luxurious. As these little hedgehogs cooked, their almond spikes toasted slightly, adding nutty notes to the overall aromatic experience, while the herb-based paint contributed fresh, green scents that completed the sensory transformation. The visual impact was extraordinary. These golden brown hedgehogs looked genuinely lifelike, with their carefully inserted almond spikes and raisin eyes, painted in brilliant colors that made them appear almost magical on medieval tables. Each bite delivered sophisticated flavors, rich, well-seasoned pork, enhanced by the complex spice blend, with the sweetness of currants providing delightful contrast and the almonds adding textural interest. The paint, made from ground parsley or saffron mixed with egg and flour, wasn't just decorative. It added subtle flavor layers that completed the culinary illusion. The ingredients revealed medieval luxury and creativity. Ground pork, egg as binder, the complex powder fort spice blend, currants, almond slivers for spikes, raisins for eyes, and the remarkable paint made from either ground parsley for green or saffron for yellow, mixed with egg and flour for proper consistency, plus sugar sprinkled on top for finishing. The preparation was labor-intensive artistry. Ground pork was thoroughly combined with the spice blend, salt, sugar, and currants, using beaten egg to bind the mixture and help it hold the distinctive hedgehog shape. Portions were rolled into football shapes approximately 1.5 inches long, then carefully studded with almond slivers to create realistic spikes and small raisins positioned as eyes. After initial cooking through roasting, baking, or pan frying, the decorative paint was carefully brushed onto each hedgehog's surface before completing the cooking process. Finally, a sprinkle of sugar added the finishing touch to these delightful medieval table entertainments. Conclusion: these 25 forgotten medieval provisions reveal a truth we've somehow lost along the way. Convenience food isn't a modern invention. Medieval cooks were the original fast food innovators, creating portable meals that solve problems we're still wrestling with today. They figured out how to make food last without refrigeration, stay warm without microwaves, and travel without falling apart. More importantly, they did it all while creating genuine flavor and satisfaction. From trenchers that eliminated dirty dishes to Cornish pasties with built-in disposable handles, these weren't just random food experiments. They were carefully engineered solutions born from necessity, but perfected through generations of refinement. The medieval cook who stuffed eggs with mint and painted meat hedgehogs with saffron understood something we've forgotten: that food should nourish both body and spirit, even when eaten on the go. These recipes prove that human ingenuity in the kitchen is timeless. Whether you're a 14th century monk brewing ale bread or a modern commuter grabbing lunch, the fundamental challenge remains the same. How do you create something satisfying, portable, and delicious with the resources you have? Medieval cooks solved it with style, creativity, and a level of resourcefulness that would put our grab-and-go culture to shame. Maybe it's time we learned from their example.